Hello and welcome to the Cinema Sit-Down powered by Groovy. My name is Dom and I'm a Key Account and Business Development Manager here at Groovy's branch in Perth, Australia. Today I'm excited to be joined by Alex Moir, who is the Head of Marketing for Palace Cinemas here in Australia. For those unfamiliar, Palace is Australia's leading independent cinema group, operating over 20 locations Australia-wide, with each site fully licensed and offering a boutique premium cinema-going experience. It also runs international film festivals all year round, bringing the best of contemporary and classic cinema from Italy, France, and Britain, to name a few, to Australian shores. So as the head of marketing, Alex oversees the overall marketing and branding strategies for the cinema, and he has taken time out of what I'm sure is a very busy schedule to join me on this podcast for this episode. Alex, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Dom.
So, Alex, I want to start right off the bat. I know Groovy has been working with yourself and Palace for a few years now, helping to run the cinema's digital marketing all across Australia. And through this relationship, we have seen firsthand how Palace has been supporting the theatrical experience here locally. But I wanted to know, in your opinion, what is it about Palace that specifically distinguishes it from other cinemas?
I guess it's not just any one thing that distinguishes us, in the sense of, really the main distinguishing feature we have is we are a circuit of, 17 cinemas plus even more with our joint venture partners. But every single cinema, there aren't any two that are the same. Each one has its own unique identity. Each one has its own unique programming ethos. Each one has its own unique audience. And that's the real driving force behind what makes Palace successful, along with us being able to offer a more diverse selection of films, particularly the foreign language and international film festivals. That's certainly our bread and butter and our key point of difference, but really is that kind of bespoke philosophy we have for every venue. Like, every venue has a different design ethos, and every venue we really try to listen to the audience and let the audience define who we are, and not vice versa.
Do you find, obviously the last few years have been quite challenging for cinemas overall, of course, for obvious reasons that we probably don't necessarily have to go into, because I'm sure everyone knows.
Yeah, what happened again? I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I think it just completely washed over me. But what has been, I guess, a big challenge for you in the last maybe year or so since that?
The biggest challenge has definitely been the disrupt in films coming down the pipeline. The release calendar being so volatile, and I guess that was the hardest thing for us to maintain, is this idea of the longevity of cinema, or even the sustainability of cinema. It's like we can see firsthand what happens when we get a great release, and we can feel that tangibility around, audiences are responding to this. It's cinema that's driving its awareness, etc. But then when it falls off and there's nothing on the release calendar for several months, it gets very back into that kind of narrative of, cinema is dead, etc. And it's like, well, it's not. It's just that the pipeline has been disrupted.
And do you find that, obviously, when you have a bit of a disrupted pipeline, as you said, that your marketing efforts change a little bit? Have you noticed any change of how you've tried to market content perhaps more strategically because of these disruptions, or any new avenues you've potentially explored to, I guess, make up for those disruptions?
I don't think we've done anything differently to make up for those disruptions, because I think Palace was in a very good situation, in the sense that we had a more diverse range of films to show that wasn't necessarily being disrupted. And that was, for us, giving us the benchmark of, there's still an audience here. They just needed the right film. And the main example of that is our film festivals. Like, every year since the pandemic, our film festivals have still been incredibly strong. And even more recently, in the last few years, our film festivals have been beating pre-pandemic levels. And that's the real thing we've sort of leaned into, is, okay, we've still got all of these great films that are our point of difference, and were our point of difference before the pandemic. But now we can lean into them more and rely on them more.
And you mentioned that, obviously you're tracking the performance of these festivals, of these films before and after. So I'm curious, how important is data to your overall marketing strategy?
I would say it's important to validate marketing strategy, but I sort of shy away from data leading our marketing strategy, in the sense of, if data was leading all of the strategies, for both producers, studios and exhibitors, they'd be making hits 100% of the time, and we'd be making money on every single film. That's not the case. Everyone is still has to make gut assumptions, and they have to make creative decisions. But I think data is really helpful in validating when we get them right, when we get them wrong, what things we should be leaning into more. But I'm not necessarily the philosophy that data should be leading. I think it should be validating and revealing, but I don't think it should lead.
So I guess on the same token, I'm curious about how much focus there is on your loyalty club, and also obviously you have the Palace Movie Club, and you deal with, I guess, first party data in that sense, but you actually know the individuals, know the taste and preference. Is that something that's a key focus for you in your marketing efforts?
Yeah, and I would say it is the key focus. Like our movie club is our primary promotional channel. It is the thing that helps us speak to audiences and segment those audiences. I mean, like I was saying before, Palace's strongest point of difference and its main strength in its brand identity is it has a very unique identity for every single site. But that's incredibly challenging from a marketing point of view. There's no kind of umbrella brand, so to speak. There is an umbrella brand, but it's very hard to fit all of these different kind of audience profiles under it. And so with loyalty, that does make it much easier to segment those audiences and market the most appropriate film to, basically right product for the right audience.
Yeah. Do you have any ability of tracking returning customers through your movie club and the EDM database you have? Is that something that you actually utilize on your end?
Yeah, we do, particularly through a movie club. We do track returning customers, etc. How many unique customers we have, what percentage of admissions they make up in the market. But we do look at that stuff. But again, it really is driven by product. So we more so focus on product more than anything else, as in the films. I don't really like referring to it as product. I like referring it, as films. But if we don't have a good film, we're not going to have any meaningful business.
Speaking of film and not product, how closely do you actually work with film distributors? And has that relationship, have you noticed it to have changed over the years, or has it been largely the same?
Well, I mean, I became head of marketing in December 2019. And so then it got real fucked after that. Put it bluntly. So basically I had 2 good months and then it went to shit. So in terms of my context pre-pandemic, I can't say whether it has changed or hasn't changed, but we work incredibly close with our film distribution partners, and our film distribution partners have been the main thing that's been able to help us grow the brand, grow our audience profiles into different segments, and they're really kind of flexible and bespoke when it comes to understanding when it's the right film for Palace and when they can help us push it.
And where do you see Palace 10 years from now? Like, is there an overarching goal, I guess, to get it to a certain point, or is it more just seeing things 1 year at a time?
I can't really comment on where I see the brand in 10 years, other than, we have kept growing since the pandemic. We've opened up 3 new cinemas, I think. We opened up Pentridge. We took over another site, Ballina, in rural New South Wales. And we're about to open Penny Lane in Moonee Ponds. And so, we have been continuing to grow. But I think for us, the main thing we're really looking to do is kind of maintain what Antonio Zekel has started with this company, is bringing in great art house films, bringing in great foreign language films, and showcasing a diverse slate of films to a diverse audience.
And I guess on that ethos, on a bit of a lighter note, what sort of films are you into? Are you a film festival guy? Are you a big blockbuster Marvel type guy, or what are you interested in?
I'm one of those guys that watched everything. Like my formative cinema going years were in Sydney, so I would go to the art houses, I would go to the multiplexes, I would be at the cinema maybe twice a week, 3 times a week. Generally saw everything, both in cinema, both in TV, music, etc. I mean, I would say, you know, most of my top 5 films probably skew art house, but I love my spectacle films. And I think that's something that can be said of the Palace audience to an extent. Is sometimes you can sort of say, well, this person only sees art house films. But I just don't necessarily think that's true. I think most people that are art house film lovers, they do love quality mainstream. I mean, particularly the likes of, say, Barbie and Oppenheimer. Both of those films were incredibly layered, and you know, Palace really overperformed on both of those titles because we do have quite a refined, mature, sophisticated audience, and they were quite sophisticated films at the end of the day.
And obviously, you said you've worked for Palace for about 4 years, if I'm not mistaken.
I've worked for Palace for nearly 10 years now, but I started all the way down as a, you know, usher. I was sweeping up popcorn and everything.
I can imagine, like, throughout all those years working at Palace, you've probably worked on some pretty cool activations. Like, is there one that really sticks out to you as like one of the most memorable ones you've been involved in?
Yeah, I would say my favorite experience was opening up Pentridge. So Pentridge Cinema, it's located in the old Pentridge prison in Melbourne. But we opened that in December 2020. So it was after first wave COVID. We were still mapping out the opening during lockdown. We were trying to figure out when we could open it, like when the lockdown would finish. And somehow we managed to, thanks to Roadshow Films, we managed to get the Australian premiere of The Dry with Eric Bana. Eric Bana, of course, is, you know, famous for Chopper. Chopper was based at Pentridge Prison, and yeah, we kind of that whole experience was an absolute nightmare at the time in terms of dealing with a lockdown. But that night was one of the best nights of my career. Just seeing an audience back together after all the lockdowns in a cinema. It was a great film. It was a great star. It was a great director with Robert Connolly. And Robert Connolly actually went out of his way to introduce, we had 15 cinema screens. They were all filled. Well, I think we could only fill them to 60% capacity because of the COVID laws. But Robert and I went around every single screen and he introduced the film to every single audience member. And that was really special.
I mean, that just sounds like an amazing night. Now I'm just jealous that I didn't get to go. So if there's another event like that, just please let me know so that I can fly over.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's been great to chat, Alex. I mean, thank you so much for joining me today. And obviously, we look forward to continuing our work. So obviously, we'll still be chatting a lot more in the future.
Thanks so much, John.
So that's all for us this week. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the Cinema Sit Down.